play on Shakespeare's famous quote, "Wherefore art thou Romeo?" which actually means, "Why are you Romeo?" not "Where are you Romeo?" So let's explore why I'm Rachel, why I am who I am, and what made me that way. Let's start with the entrance interview. After filling out all the questions, I gained a basic understanding of where my values come from. As we progressed further into the semester, that understanding reached a more complex level, but for now, let's start at the beginning. I learned that my values come from two places: my own critical thinking and my parents. The values you learn when you're a child, the basic building blocks of your moral compass and personality, came from my parents. But more complex ideas, such as determining where right ends and wrong begins, are ideas I initially took from my parents, but have since changed due to my experiences and feelings. So that's where I started. But what else happened in English this semester? We had a lot of discussions, and they weren't always based on the curriculum, but they were important. Mr. Blake started the year by telling us to get splashed, his analogy for explaining how we should be saturated with understanding. If we aren't, we shouldn't be afraid to ask, was another point that made me think. If you don't hand in your assignment, that's your fault. Being late to class, not asking for clarification, both your fault. But if you don't understand initially, that's not your fault. And I've never heard that before, especially not from a teacher. So that particular conversation opened my eyes to the fact that I blame myself for a lot of little things, especially when it comes to my learning. And because of that, I've connected a lack of a teacher's explanation with me being stupid. This, in fact, is not the case. Realizing that was a big step for me, and it helped me move towards the overall change I experienced this semester. We also talked about a donut. Who could forget the mysterious item on the brown paper bag and how we all struggled to describe it? Was it a pastry? Made with flour and sugar? A circle? A torus, perhaps. All we knew for sure was that it most definitely did not have a hole in the middle. Mr. Blake's description, though, was simpler. It's everything it's meant to be. A little philosophical for a donut, perhaps, but true nonetheless. So it made me think, what am I meant to be? A CEO? Baby cat lady? It sounds outrageous, but nearly anything is possible. The only thing I was able to conclude is that I'm not there yet, not fulfilling every aspect of who I'm meant to be. A couple characteristics of who I am are already very apparent to me. Writer, scientist. But some I have yet to discover, and I think that being open to accepting new traits into your identity is one of the only ways to grow as a person. Overall, the donut discussion resulted in some very interesting conclusions indeed. King Lear by William Shakespeare. Now, we all know the Fool was the most valuable character in the play. He's the foil to Lear's eventual descent into insanity. The Fool is wisdom. The idea of a character as the personification of a concept was something very new to me. Characters that symbolize or represent a concept are much different than a character that is a concept. So the Fool being wisdom was a funny thought to wrap my head around. Then, we took it to a whole new level in class. With the Wire demo, Mr. Blake showed us how people can be concepts, based on their actions and the way someone else interprets those same actions. So, what do others think of me as? Have I ever been the personification of something to someone else? What about to myself? I believe that sometimes I'm the personification of strength, not of the physical, but emotional variety. Everyone says that the teenage years are difficult. Parents, teachers, and other teenagers. But I honestly believe that I've experienced some negative events that surpass what qualifies as normal, even as a teenager. Yet, I've still been able to overcome these things, and I have still pushed forward. In fact, because of these events, I'm even more motivated to better myself as a person. I have the option to shut down and give up, but choosing to move on and better myself every day is why I believe I can personify strength. Trying to choose a concept that I think I embody was a difficult process, and required me to reach back into parts of my past that I'm not particularly fond of. When you won't like what you'll find, reflecting critically can become quite a task. Once the process is through, however, it yields some pretty interesting results and revelations. Honestly, I never would have thought I'd pick such a positive characteristic when asking myself what I think I represent. Over the course of the semester, I've explored what makes up my identity and why. The main change I've seen in myself is a shift to more positive thinking. My entrance interview answers were all exceedingly negative, and upon reflecting and completing my exit interview, a lot of my answers have changed even though the content of the question is still the same. Negative adjectives have been exchanged for more encouraging ones, and I refer to myself as a work in progress rather than a failed attempt. My language and thinking has become more positive after the discussions we had this semester, because talking about what we're meant to be, what we represent, and being taught not to blame ourselves for everything, they're all important lessons that I was never really taught before. What kind of classroom focuses on life lessons, really? It's unfortunate that it took this long in the education system before learning something useful about myself, because I feel like a lot of self-loathing and blame could have been avoided if I'd ever been reminded to remember that I'm learning, a work in progress, a personification of something positive. All of these things are part of what make up my identity, and learning that has been a huge step in my understanding of why I am who I am.